You can change your finances in just 6 months, so today I want to show you the exact steps that I would take if I had to give away my $300,000 portfolio and start over from scratch. We've got a lot to cover today, so let's jump right in. Month 1 is all about understanding your current financial situation. This is the most important step because you really have to get a good understanding of where you're at now and where you want to go if you want to create a meaningful plan moving forward. And because we're going to completely change our life in just 6 months, we are definitely going to need a plan. Without one, it would be far too easy to get lazy, unmotivated, and quit before reaping the benefits. So first we need to get a pulse on our financial situation as it stands today. And this is not how you want it to be. It's not how you feel it should be, how it actually is. And I'll be honest, this step can be pretty tough because especially when you're first starting out, you typically have nothing to your name. All you have is a job that probably doesn't pay as much as you want and maybe even some debt to your name. And when I first started my journey towards financial freedom, I had some debt to my name. I had an old truck that I was paying off towards my parents, and I didn't really have a career goal besides become a pro hockey player. Oh, and I was earning minimum wage working for the Lord's chicken. I knew at this point I needed to make a change in order for things to change. Duh. So the first thing I did was sit down on my computer and track every single thing I've spent for the past few years. And after a few hours of doing this, I noticed some issues with my bank account, specifically in the realm of restaurants. In fact, I distinctly remember one month where I spent almost $300 on breakfast burritos alone because I would just pick one up on the way to work every single day. And as silly as that sounds, that was actually a pretty good wake-up call for me. But I also saw that even if I saved more money, it really wouldn't be enough. What I mean is it wouldn't even come close to the amount of money that I would need to achieve financial freedom. So I had to find a way to increase my income so I don't keep working a 12-hour job in a hot kitchen making minimum wage when I could be working on stuff that I'm passionate about and earn more money. So the way that you can practically do this is first log into your bank account and head over to your main checking account where all of your expenses come out of. Then what you want to do is find some type of filter button to adjust the date range to grab the last 12 months of your expenses. Once you do that, you can just hit download to Excel or CSV. They're basically going to be the same thing. Then you want to open up that Excel file and keep it as simple as possible with 4 columns. We're going to grab date, amount, description, and the category. Simply go through line by line and organize everything in a very broad category like food, car, insurance, mortgage, etc. And once you have it sorted like that, you have a very clear picture of what you spend the most on to what you spend the least on and room for improvement in your budget. So now that we know where our current financial situation is, we'll move on to month 2, which is about creating a very clear goal of where you want to go. Now, the reason this is month number 2 is because you want to know exactly where you're going before you start taking off full head of steam in the wrong direction. Because even if you were moving fast, if you're going the wrong way, it's going to do more harm than good to your goals. Also, the problem that most people have with not having a long-term financial goal is that it trickles down to the day-to-day decisions that they make. They think life will naturally improve just because time passes, but if you've been around for any amount of time at all, you know that's not true. You have to be focused and purposeful every single day to achieve big life transformations, which is why I'm dedicating an entire month to figuring this out. Now, when I did this a few years ago, I broke down some of my income goals along with how much I would be saving and investing when I got there. And you can think of this kind of like daydreaming how life will be like once you're finally rich, once you've, made it. Sometimes I would take this to the extremes and kind of think through how I would handle winning the lottery if I ever did that, which I'm not going to play the lottery because that's a dumb idea, but just for the sake of fun. Because the beautiful thing about daydreaming about these things is that there are no limits, and that's how it should be. Do not hold yourself back from picturing what kind of decisions you would make if you had the job or income of your dreams. But just to help guide you on this financial daydream, here are some questions that you can ask yourself to kickstart the journey. First is, what do you love spending money on? And how can you do more of that? If you had infinite income, what would you buy and where would you live? What does your day-to-day look like and who are you spending all of that time with? I would often ask myself these questions just to get an idea of how I would manage my life once I got to that point. And this allowed me to sort of pre-plan my financial management without worrying about something like lifestyle creep, which is kind of a side benefit of this whole thing. And if you aren't aware already, lifestyle creep is when your spending keeps up with your income. So say, for example, you got a $5,000 raise this year. If you spent an extra $5,000 because you got an increase in income, that's lifestyle creep. And because it happens slowly, it's really hard to catch it when we're not being fully intentional with the money that we're making now and the money that we might make in the future. So make sure to ask yourself these questions so you get an idea of what life could be like if you follow the principles that I'm about to share for the next 4 months. Month 3 is all about paying off high interest debt, and to make sure that we are not getting overwhelmed, we're going to start with the smallest debt that you have first. Now, paying off high interest debt, as opposed to a mortgage, for example, in month 3 is critical because it's the complete opposite of investing, and it's the last thing that we want on our personal balance sheet. It takes extra money from us, it introduces risk, and it keeps us up at night, which is why I say this all the time: debt is negative investing. And that's because interest is being taken from you rather than being earned. And there are so many downsides to having high interest debt and basically no upsides. So that's why the goal for this month is to pick the smallest debt we have and throw every single penny that we possibly possibly can at it. Do not go out to eat, do not go to the movies, do not buy any new clothes, nothing. We're staying laser focused at gaining momentum because remember, we're trying to transform our lives in a very short period of time. The last thing you want to do is sabotage that by acting casually. And if you wanted casual, you probably would not be watching this video right now. So there you go. Now, the reason I say to pay off the smallest debt first as opposed to the highest interest, for example, is because we want to get quick wins so you know what it feels like to have that financial burden lifted off your shoulders. And I'm not saying the snowball or the avalanche method is better than the other for paying off debt. Both are great depending on your situation and your goals and your personality. But again, we're on a short timeline. We want to see progress, and this is a great way to start. Month 4 is all about increasing your income, and I think the most immediate way for all of us to do this who are not business owners is to negotiate a raise. This is most likely going to be the hardest part of the entire thing, but it will also yield the greatest results in the shortest amount of time. And I get that not every company is going to allow you to negotiate a raise and just get one on the spot, but that's not necessarily the main point here. The real reason we're negotiating a raise is to put that idea in front of your boss or manager that you want to get more done and you want to push further into your career. And when you approach asking for a raise in a way that shows that you're open to creating a plan, you'd be surprised at the positive feedback, assuming your boss is a decent person and wants you to succeed. If you aren't, you might want to consider moving jobs because having a terrible boss is one of the top reasons for unhappiness at work. Anyway, another reason why negotiating a raise is a wonderful idea is because you get to practice the skill of negotiation. And that will pay dividends throughout your life in pretty much every area. And that's because negotiating is hard and it can be uncomfortable to do it successfully because you have to be confident in who you are, what you want, and what you can offer the other side. Now, those top 3 traits alone could turn you into a powerhouse of a person because they're not easy to accomplish. They require you to think deeply about yourself, discover what you really want in life, understand the skills that you currently hold to get there, and communicate that clearly so that the other side knows what you're asking for and what you can offer. And all of this can be done by starting a simple conversation with your boss or manager and just watch how much you learn. Another way to increase your income is by getting a part-time job whenever you have some spare time available. This could be driving for Uber or DoorDash or working at your local gym. It really doesn't matter what you pick. The point is that there are tons of ways to make some extra cash that don't really take a lot of skill to learn and that you can start pretty much immediately. And I should mention that a part-time job isn't necessarily the long-term play. I simply have it here as an option for increasing your monthly income if you need a quick boost of cash. But far and above, my favorite way to increase income is by working on a side hustle that has the potential to turn into a full hustle, which, spoiler alert, that's one of the reasons why I'm here on YouTube. Now, I don't think I'll ever have a channel like Mr. Beast, for example, but that's not exactly what makes YouTube so special. What makes it attractive is the ability to scale my income while also working on things that I actually love and enjoy. For example, if I spend 20 hours on a video today, I make $0. But if I spend 20 hours on a video 5 years from now and I have more subscribers, I could make $5,000. So that's what I'm talking about. Those are the types of activities that I want to spend my time on now because it generates a really long-term play for me to increase my income over time. And you can do the same thing too. You can write online, like on Substack, for example. You can create content that people want to watch and post it on YouTube or Instagram. You could build digital products like checklists, PDFs, ebooks, courses, one-on-one coaching, which, by the way, I just started doing, so check that out in the description below. And if you think you don't have any cool ideas to share online, you're wrong. There's something that you know a lot more about than pretty much everybody in your life. So ask yourself, what is that thing? Or maybe people have asked you for help on that because they know that you're the local expert. And this can be something as complex as financial management and investing, or it can be something as simple as you dress really cool and people want to know how to dress better. But I highly encourage you to consider this path because it not only provides the greatest room for income in the future, but also you get to work on stuff that you love and you're passionate about. Anyway, let's move on to month 5, which is save 15% of your income. Now, whether you make $10,000 per year or $1 million per year, saving will always be a fundamental piece of financial freedom. And using a percentage like 15 allows you to level the playing field no matter how much money you make. Because if I said something like $100 per month, some of you might think that's way too hard to do and it's not really doable in your situation. And others might think that's such a small amount that it's not going to be enough to cover any type of big expense that I have. Also, I like 15% as a starting point because you are absolutely going to feel this if you've never saved this much before. The first place you'll feel this is in available cash for spending. If you aren't used to saving this much because you're living paycheck to paycheck and spending all your discretionary money on daily Amazon orders or a new car payment that you don't really need, 15% will feel like a significant hole in your fun money. Good. That's the point. I never said changing your finances in 6 months would be easy, but it's rare that things worth doing are. The second place you'll feel this 15% is in your actual savings account, but in a good way. When you save 15% of every paycheck that you make, you're going to be shocked at how quickly things start to add up. And before you know it, you'll have enough money to cover multiple months of expenses should you ever need that. That's your emergency fund and it is not to be touched, and do yourself a favor and put it in a high yield savings account like Wealthfront, for example. That way your money can grow while it's just sitting in there doing nothing versus if it were sitting in a a regular savings account and earning, 0.02%. So better to have your money working for you, and it's one step closer to removing yourself from the rat race and actually achieving your goal. So make sure you start saving 15% of your income until you have a full 6 to 12 month emergency fund in a high yield savings account. But saving money alone is not going to get you financial freedom. The only real way is to invest. So for month 6, we're going to be investing 15% of your income. This is far and above my favorite piece of the entire process because I've been investing for over 12 years now, and it's kind of crazy to see how quickly things start to move when you're investing 15% of your income consistently into investments. And in fact, I recently upped this to 20% so that I can see it snowball even faster. And in my opinion, the more that you do this sooner, the better. By the way, 15% isn't some magic number. It's really just a starting point that I picked so that you can get the ball rolling. But my personal philosophy is to just invest as much as possible after you get a full 6 to 12 month emergency fund. I also like 15% as a starting point because you get to see the 15% of savings, 15 to investments, and then 70 for spending on everything else. And learning to live off 70% of your income is a guaranteed way to never go broke because you follow the most fundamental principle in all of personal finance, which is spend less than you make. 70% also gives you enough money to not completely starve yourself of quality of life, while also instilling good financial habits in you, with that 30% going to build up your life for future you. And if you're lucky enough to have a 401k at your job, I recommend putting the full 15% in that account for now. And the reason being is because if you've never invested before, starting something like your own Roth IRA, for example, can be a little bit overwhelming and intimidating. And that's because it's fully up to you to set up the account correctly, make sure you connect your bank account, transfer money over, and then pick investments that you hope don't go to zero. Now, I know that's a bit exaggerated, but I know that stocks make people feel very confused and overwhelmed when you're first starting out because you don't understand what you're doing and what you're buying. But with your 401k, your employer will most likely automatically enroll you into a plan and take some portion of your paycheck into that account. So really the only thing you need to do is log into your 401k account and increase the contributions to 15%. But if you really want to get crazy with it, you can check out your investments and see if they put you in something called a target date fund. Now, this is pretty typical, and a target date investment is really just a fund that's set to aim for the year that you're most likely going to retire. So if you're 25 in 2025, for example, you're probably going to retire in 2065, which is 40 years from now. And so most likely there's going to be something called a 2065 target date fund. Easy enough. And what this does is automatically adjust your investments over time to be less and less risky as you get older and older. And this is typically a good choice for a lot of people because it's pretty much set it and forget it, and you don't really have to worry about changing your investments as you get closer to retirement. However, I like to personally pick my own investments within my 401k because I want to earn a little bit more than target date funds generally give you over time. But that's completely up to you, your personality, and your own goals. The main point is that you have 15% of your income into investments, which is a massive win. So let's do a 10-second recap of how you can completely transform your finances in 6 months. Understand your current financial situation, get a clear goal, pay off any high interest debt, increase your income, save 15%, and invest 15%. And if you want my help with any of these steps I mentioned today, click the link in the description below that says book a free call, and I would be happy to help you out. Otherwise, check out this video next to see how I saved my first $100,000, and I will see you soon. Peace.